Okay, I want to talk about FTP servers, and what we're going to do here is I've got Windows Server 2008 installed here and as a virtual machine, and I haven't logged in yet, but I'm going to log in here in a moment. And what we're going to do is we're going to install an FTP server on this Windows Server 2008, and specifically we're going to be installing FTP version 7.5 in IIS7. Now the version of FTP that comes with Windows Server 2008 is it's got problems. It's kludgy and clunky, and it's not updated to the latest version for 2008. It may be in 2012. But anyway, if you use that as a server role, it's not going to function properly. So we're going to be downloading and installing FTP 7.5. Now, what I'm going to be demoing here, you're going to be doing in your lab today. So pay attention if you would, and let's get going. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and log into this server. And I'm going to log in as administrator. Okay, and once I get logged in, I'm going to go up and going to fire up a web browser and download FTP 7.5. Now we're going to run into a little bit of issue with Internet Explorer because Internet Explorer does a lot of security stuff and blocking things, so we may have to work with that to get it to work. So let me go ahead and fire up Internet Explorer here. And alright, so we're going to go and we're going to do a Google search. And we're going to search for FTP 7.5. Okay, and what I'm looking for here is www.iis.net download FTP publishing service. I'm going to click on that link and close that and click here for options, more info. It's blocking me here, so I'm going to have to do some things to allow this to happen. So let me close that and let me go up and first of all let me copy that link and go to Internet Options, and let's go to Security and Trusted Sites. Click on the Sites button, and I want to add iis.net, and I also want to add this specific download. Oh, it's already there. Okay. Alright, so let's close, and now I should be able to get to it, hopefully. And I do, so let me go on down the page. Alright, what I'm looking for is the download FTP 7.5, and I can either download the 32-bit version x86 or x64. I'm not sure which one I have here, so I'm going to have to go out and check it. So let me go back to the desktop. Let's do right-click on my computer properties and take a look and see which version we have. Alright, I've got the 32-bit operating system here, so I'll need to download the x86 version instead of the x64. So I'm going to have to right-click here. I'm going to save target as, and I'm going to be saving a Windows installer package, which is a .msi file. So let me go ahead and save that. And it says it's complete, so I'm going to go and run it. And that is the FTP underscore x86 underscore 75.msi. I'm going to go ahead and run it. I can close Internet Explorer at this point. Alright, so we're at the Welcome to the FTP Service 7.5 for IIS7 setup wizard. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and click Next and get the ball rolling here. I'm going to go ahead and accept the terms and click Next, and this is what we're going to be installing, an FTP server. So let's go ahead and click Next and click Install and let it go ahead and install. Okay, so it's completed the FTP Server 7.5 for IIS7. So let's finish. And let me go back and do something I didn't do initially, and that is, let's go to properties. I wanted to show you that oh, it's not properties. Hold on a minute. Let me go to manage. The IP address of this server, local area connections 192.168.1.175, so we'll need to remember that. Okay, you'll notice we took the defaults for everything when we installed 7.5 for FTP there. The next thing I need to do is I need to create some local users on the system, because I'm going to be wanting to FTP up to the local user folders when I get to that point when I create it. So I'm going to create some local users. I'm going to create Jethro and Ellie here. So I'm going to right click on the computer and manage. And this is opening the server manager for Windows Server 2008. I'm going to open up the configuration. Now this computer, or server rather, is a standalone. It's not connected to a domain, so this is local users and computers or groups. So I'm going to expand that and select the users. Right now I've only got myself, an administrator, and a guest, and I'm going to create Jethro and Ellie. So I'm going to right click and select new user, and I want to type in Jethro, full name Jethro Bodine, and I'm going to give them a password of PA55W0RD. PA55W0RD. I'm not going to make him change the password at next log on, so I'm going to create that account, and then I'm going to create the Ellie account. And I'm going to give her the same password, PA55W0RD, PA55W0RD, and she won't need to change that password at next log on either, so I'll create those. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and close that. Now I've got Ellie Mae and I've got Jethro accounts created here. Okay, now that we've got these accounts created, the next thing we need to do is we need to go into IIS7 Manager and install some folders for FTP. So let's close this, and I've got the Internet Information Services Manager. This is what we're going to be using to manage the FTP sites as well. As you recall, we use this for managing the web server. So let me double click on it and open that up. And first of all, before I do that, let me close this for a second and right click and properties. Oh no, I don't want to do that either. I want to go to, forget what I was doing here. Double click on computer. I want to get in here and click on the C drive, double click on that. Remember, with the web server we use the inet pub and then the www root. Okay, we're going to be needing to set up something similar for the FTP setup that we have for FTP 7.5, and FTP 7.5 requires a folder here under inet pub called FTP root. So let's right click and create a new folder called FTP root. It has to be FTP root, just like the one for the web server is www root. And then there's another folder for local users that we need to create under FTP root. So let's get into FTP root and let's right click, create a new folder called Jethro. Called local user first. It has to be local user, not local users. A lot of students make mistakes and put an S on the end of that, and it won't work. It has to be local user. It has to be a capital L, capital U. So let's close that and create that folder. Now let's get into that folder and let's create the Jethro and the Ellie folder, the ones that we're going to be FTPing up to. So I'm going to create the Jethro folder, and then I'm going to create the Ellie folder. Okay. Alright, now that we've got these folders created, we're going to have to give these folders rights for the new users for FTP purposes. So what I'm going to do here is configure the rights for Ellie and Jethro separately, and we're going to give them full control access here in TFS. So let me right click on Ellie and go down to Properties and select the Security tab here, and you'll notice just got users, and users here have read and write only. So I'm going to click Edit here, and I want to click Add, and I want to add Ellie to Ellie's folder. And let me click OK. Let me give her full control, and click OK here. Close that, and then under Jethro's folder, I want to right-click on Jethro, and click on Security tab, and click Edit as well, and then click Add, and then click type in Jethro, ETHRO, and let's click OK and add. Oops, full control. And then click OK to give full control for Jethro Bodine to the Jethro folder, so that they have total read and write capability, and well, actually full control capability. They can do anything in those folders that we FTP up to there when we do that later. Okay, now that we have those folders created, let's go ahead and close this interface, and let's get into the IIS manager. So I'm going to double click that. We need to create the FTP site itself, and we need to do that in the Internet Information Services 7 server manager, because that's where it's managed, same place we manage websites. So I'm going to expand here and expand this, and you'll notice we have the default website. You have to have IIS 7 running and installed and running here before you can install the FTP 7.5, and since we didn't have any issues, we already knew that. So to create a new FTP site here, let's right-click on Sites, and instead of Add New Website, we're going to add FTP Site. Alright, and one of the differences here you'll notice with FTP as opposed to websites, you can have as many websites as you want under www root, and you've probably already done that. So you could have 50 or 100 websites going simultaneously, but for the most part, FTP is single purpose. So you probably only want to use one FTP site here ever. So that's what we're going to be doing. So for the FTP site name, we're going to call it FTP. We're going to call it default FTP. Okay, and then the physical path we're going to give it is we're going to click on that button, and it's going to be directed to inetpub c inetpub FTP root. And let's click OK. So that's the physical path we're giving it, and we're going to click Next. Alright, so now we need to look at bindings and SSL settings here for our FTP server. What we're going to do here is we don't have an SSL certificate, so we're not going to require it. We don't want the no SSL. We want to be able to use it at some point. So we're going to allow SSL here, and we're going to click Next. And then for authentication and authorization information, we're not going to allow anonymous. We're not going to allow just anybody to log in here. We're going to require some basic authentication. So we're going to click the Basic tab box, and then we're going to allow access to. We're going to allow access to all users. Now, we could allow access to specified users and only let Ellie and Jethro in, but I'm just going to allow all users at this point. You know, here's one other important thing about FTP servers that you need to pay attention to, and that is, even though we gave full control NTFS permissions to Jethro and Ellie, their folders, we must give permissions here within the FTP 7.5, or they won't be able to do anything in those folders. So we have to give them read and write permissions, and we're doing it for all users, not just Ellie and Jethro. So let's click Finish here. Alright, and so now at this point it's opened back up into the default FTP home. The first thing we want to look at here, we can expand that, local users, and there's your Ellie and Jethro folders, okay? Before I forget it, let me do something. I want to put, let me open up computer. Let me go into here, C drive, inetpub. FTP root, local user, and then Ellie, I'm going to put a file there so we know we can test the FTP server and know that we've hit it if we've got contents in there. So let me click on here and let me create a new text document. Let me make sure that we turned off the hiding of extensions. So tools, folder options, view. Let's unhide the extensions that Windows likes to do for us. And so we've created a new text document, and let's rename it. We're going to call it Ellie file. Okay, so there's an Ellie file in the Ellie folder. Okay, let's go back out to local user and go into the Jethro folder, and let's create a new text document there as well, so we know we've hit that folder. And let's call it Jethro file.txt. Okay. All right. Now that I have that, let me close this. Under the default FTP home, you've got the FTP authentication. If I double click on it, let me go ahead and expand this so you can see this a little better. You can see that we have anonymous authentication disabled, and then we have basic authentication enabled, and we knew that, but we just wanted to verify it. Okay. All right. So let's go back out to default FTP again. The authentication is, who you are getting into the system. So you have to authenticate to get in, and you have to have rights to authenticate. All right. And so FTP authorization is what you can do once you're authenticated on the FTP server. So let's double click on that, and what we're telling the FTP server here is that we want to allow all users here. Okay. Okay, one other thing we need to do before we leave IIS Services Manager is we want to make sure that we isolate Ellie from Jethro. We don't want Ellie to be able to get into Jethro's folder, and we don't want Jethro to get into Ellie's. So there's an icon here called FTP User Isolation. So if I double click on it, it opens up this interface, and it says the FTP User Isolation prevents users from accessing the FTP home directory of another user. We want to isolate these users, and how we want to isolate them is by their physical directory. We want the username physical directory to be the means of isolation. All right, and so I'm going to go ahead and apply that here. And now at this point I can go ahead and close the IIS Manager. Okay, at this point what I want to do is I want to go ahead and test it on. I'm on the server here, so it's a local machine, and I want to test to see if FTP is working. So I'm going to click on Start and get a command prompt up. And what I'm going to do here is type in the command FTP localhost. And it says we're connected to the Windows Server 2008. It's looking for a user, so I'm just going to type in Ellie. And the password for Ellie is PA55W0RD. And it says the user's logged in. So we know the FTP server is up and running, okay, because this confirms it here that we're logged in. If I wanted to log in as Jethro to test that, I could. And so what I'll do is I'll type in quit, and that tells me goodbye. And let me do FTP localhost again. You can use quit or you can use bye there to get out. And now it says we're connected back to it again, to the FTP service, and I'm going to type in Jethro just to prove we can get into Jethro. PA55W0RD, and it says that Jethro is also logged in. Okay, so we know that that is up and running. All right, I'm logged in now as Jethro still, and so I want to just test to see if we can look at the file we put in his folder. So I'm going to do a dir on the directory and see if it will show me the Jethro file. It does. Okay, so we're looking at the Jethro file that we put up there around the FTP server in the actual directory that we created for Jethro. And so let me quit this and let me log in again as Ellie. And let me do a dir on that folder, and sure enough we can see the Ellie file. Notice we cannot see the Jethro file here. And Another way we can test to see if the server is working properly, let's go ahead and quit this. And so I'm going to say bye and exit, get out of it. Alright, I'm just going to open up a Windows Explorer window here. So I'm going to go to Documents, and I'm going to go ahead and type in FTP. The IP address of that server, remember, was 192.168.1.175. Alright, and we get a login box here, which is good, which means we hit the FTP server. So I'm going to type in Ellie as the username and type in PA55W0RD and log in here, and then we should see the Ellie file, and we do. Okay, we would get the same thing if I typed in, logged in as Jethro, so I'm not going to do that. But you can see that this is another way to test the server by using Windows Explorer here on the server and using the FTP command. One of the other things I want to bring to your attention, though, is you may not be aware, is that you can actually type in a user here after the / that is on the FTP server, a local user, and we have one called Jethro, and we can do a Jethro at 192.168.1.175, and if I enter here, it's going to prompt me to type in Jethro and password 55W0RD, and I can get in as Jethro. If you want to, if you're on a really trusted box and you want to do a lot of uploading to these folders, and you're not concerned about somebody getting in and looking at it, you can actually type in Jethro and a colon, and in the password PA55W0RD at, okay, and then no, that didn't. Yeah, it got me in there. I was already in Jethro. So let me go into Ellie here. Ellie PA55W0RD at, and that took me into the Ellie. So if you type in the username and password, it'll actually log you in without giving you that dialog box. Only problem is that you'll notice your password was in the blind. I mean, not in the blind. It was in the clear, and so anybody sniffing packets would be able to see that password readily. That's why you need to be on a trusted box. Okay, we showed that we were able to log into the server on this local machine, but that doesn't really do much for us because we want to be able to do this, hit the server from other machines on the outside. So we can do that and show that, but the only problem is that we're going to have is that, as you know, Windows Server as well as any other version of Windows after Windows 7 has a firewall, and so there are a lot of things being blocked, especially on this server. So we'll need to make a hole in the firewall to allow FTP to come in from the outside. So let me go ahead and close this screen here. Let me get into the firewall in the Windows Server, and you can get to that by going to Control Panel, and if you come down here, here's the Windows Firewall. I'm going to double click on it and open up the firewall, and this is the Windows Firewall interface. What we'll need to do is we'll need to allow a program through the Windows Firewall which will allow ports 20 and 21, the command and control port, and the data ports from the outside to come into the FTP server. So I'm going to click on the Allow Program through Windows Firewall, and I'm going to need to create two of these holes, okay, one for port 20, one for port 21. Right now, core networking is being allowed. I've got a file and printer sharing server on here. Network discovery is allowed. Secure worldwide FTPs, HTTPS, is allowed here, and some other things, including World Wide Web services, HTTP. Alright, so we're going to need to open up for port 20 and port 21. So let's go ahead and add the port, and I'm going to give this FTP 20 as one of the port names. We're going to give that port 20, And as you know, FTP, as I said, is a TCP, not a UDP protocol. It is a connection-oriented protocol. So let's click OK. We got it checked for TCP. Click OK. So we've created now the very first one, FTP 20. So now let's create the FTP 21 and type in port number 21, TCP. Click OK. So we've got both of these created now. Alright, so we can go ahead and click OK, and we can close the firewall and actually get out of Control Panel. Okay, now that we've got the two holes created in the firewall, we can test the FTP server access from another computer out here on the network, and I have Windows 7 running in a VM. The only problem, I'm not going to be able to test it the same way we tested it on the local box using the FTP : / and the IP address, and that's because that only works for passive FTP connections, and it will not work for active FTP connections to the computer. So we'll need to download and install an FTP client so we can get around that. So I'm going to go ahead and get on the Windows 7 box here. And let me pull that and bring that up, and let me just click on the view and auto fit the guest to the full screen. Okay, and now what I want to do is fire up Internet Explorer, and the client we're going to use here, FTP client, is the one that is a popular one called WinSCP. It's a very good one. So I want to go and at this point, let's see, let me close that screen, and let me open up here. Let's go to Bing when it settles down, and let me type in WinSCP, and that's the client we're going after. Alright, so the WinSCP official site is here. Here's the download link, so let me download there. And should come up here momentarily. There we go. We want to download the installation package for WinSCP 5.5.5. So I'm going to click on that link. And that should be coming up here shortly. Okay, we'll need to click here. Oh, we got the UAC coming up. Yep. And also click there and say download file. A lot of security on Internet Explorer. You have to get around that to do some things here, even on Windows 7. And this is Windows 7 Ultimate. Okay, so now I can go ahead and close the Internet Explorer and get that out of my way. Alright, so I'm ready to run this thing and get this thing installed. And let's go ahead and run it. Okay, let's click yes there. And as we're installing the English version here. And welcome to WinSCP Setup Wizard. Let's click next. And we want to accept the agreement. Let's click next. We want to do a typical installation as recommended. We want to use the Commander View here interface. So let's click next and then install. Okay, I'm going to uncheck these boxes and click Finish, and so WinSCP is installed. Okay, let's go ahead and test our FTP server from another computer here, the Windows 7 Ultimate. So let's double click and fire up the WinSCP and open that up. Alright, and here it is. Let me expand it a little bit. Okay, we want to use FTP here. The host name is going to be the IP address, which is 192.168.1.175, if you recall, using port 21, which is the command and control port. I'm going to leave the username and password not filled in, and let's go over to the advanced, and we need to click advanced here. And then we need to come under connection here and uncheck the passive mode. And the reason we're doing that is we want this to be an active mode, a server, so that we can test it with the WinSCP here. Alright, and so we leave everything else by default. We click OK. And so we've got that loaded. And now let's do a login. And it's prompting for credentials. So I'm going to type in Ellie and click OK. And now it's asking for a password, so let's PA55W0RD, and let's click OK there. And we need to allow access to it from the Windows firewall again. And that should open it up to full screen, and it does. Okay, so we're now actually logged in to the FTP server. We're actually looking at the Ellie file because I logged in as Ellie there. So we did get to her directory on the FTP root local user area, Ellie folder, and so we're not able to look at Jethro. If I go up the folder structure, it only takes me. Can only stay inside the Ellie folder. So that is the FTP isolation that we did earlier. One of the other things I want to do is let me go back out to the server here. And I want to, let me get to the view, and let's go ahead and stretch that. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to double click on computer, and I want to, let's see, C drive. Yeah, libshinet pub FTP root local user. And you can see the Ellie and Jethro that we did earlier. Okay, I want to get to documents here, and I want to just create a new document. I'm going to call this Win 7 Ultimate file. Okay, .text. And now let me go back out into the Windows 7 machine again. And okay, if I go to my documents, okay, I did something a little bit different. I went out and created a file called sample.bitmap, which is a picture file in the C users pictures folder here on the system. And what I want to see is if I can upload that to the Ellie folder where the Ellie file text file is. And so to do that, I can select this particular file, and then I can come up and I can do File and Upload, and then click OK, and you'll notice that uploaded the file to the Ellie folder. And I could have easily just have dragged that up and dropped it as well. It would have done the same thing. But if we go back out now to the server where the folder is, so let me close this and go to computer, C drive, inet pub, FTP root, local user, Ellie, and you'll notice that sample.bmp file is up there. So we successfully uploaded a file from the local desktop on Windows 7 Ultimate to the server folder for Ellie that she can access from anywhere, called sample.bitmap. So this shows that we are able to access the FTP server running either locally on the server or from another machine on the network, and so that's FTP.